We'll get started by showing microposts. As with users, it's easier to build the interface for showing them and creating them by starting with microposts that are already in the database. So you may recall that we made some sample data for users. Well, we'll be doing the same for microposts. So let's get started with a mock-up. Take a look at what we're aiming for. This is the user profile page with the Gravatar image, name, and then the sidebar. And the main new thing here is a list of microposts. And the idea is to have the content of the micropost and then how long ago it was posted. So posted 1 day ago, posted 2 days ago, and so on. And you can see that as part of this mock-up that we've assumed the implementation that we've already made, namely that microposts come out most recent first. So those microposts go on the user show page. Let's get started with that by going to the user's controller spec and look at the user's controller too. So here we've got the show page, or the show action rather, and let's it is show. So this is the current view for users, and what we want is some listing of all of the user's microposts. So let's start with the controller spec. Since this is for the show action, let's find that. It should be get show. There's get new, get show, describe get show, and let's put in this describe block another test, which is it. It should show the user's microposts. We'll have to make a decision about the HTML structure here. Of course, we can always change it later on, but first we need to create a couple of microposts associated with the user here. So we've got @user as a factory user right here, and this is before each block. So down here, let's say the micropost number 1 is equal to a factory for microposts. So micropost factory, and then the user is @user, and then let's put in content. Remember, we need some content for this to be valid. And a second micropost. Same user, and let's put in some new content. Say BazQuux. Now if we get the show page with the right user ID, then the response should have some sort of selector with the content of the micropost. So if we look back at our mock-up, there should be something here that has the content of the micropost. Let's just put it in a span, which is a nice general HTML element for content like this. So let's just say that it's going to be a span with a content class. So let's see, response should have selector, let's say span dot content. Remember, that's how you say that it's got a CSS class of content. It was just with a dot. And then let's say content is mp1.content. Remember, this content here is the general key that the have_selector method takes. So we're using content here in several different contexts. Actually, this is the content of the micropost. This is the normal key for have_selector, and this is the class. And let's make another one. It should have selectors for both. Let's say also for mp2. So I saved it and see if we're read, as we should be. There we are. And now we're ready to work on the show view. Let's take a look at it. We want to have this right underneath or it's right underneath the H1. We want to render a bunch of microposts. But we don't want to render them if there aren't any, because some users might not have microposts. So let's put this in here. Let's say if @user.microposts .any, put on the end. So if there are any microposts, then let's put in a table. And let's give it a class microposts. And tables need a summary to be valid HTML, at least in HTML5. And then let's just use the trick we learned in the last lesson, where we can just render a list. We can just render an array of microposts. Let's do render @microposts. Of course, this means in the user's controller, we're going to have to make an @micropost variable. And this also means that we're going to have to create a partial called _micropost. Remember, in the case of rendering all the users, let's look at that. Remember, render @users automatically goes through and renders each of these users using the _user partial. So over here, we're going to want an _micropost partial. You may also remember that this any method was used before. It's in our error partial, the error messages. We did if @user.errors.any ? So this is another usage of that, and micropost is just an array. So if we go over here, we can say empty array.any is false. We've actually seen this before. We saw it in lesson 4 about Ruby. So .empty. So these guys are just complements, any ? and empty ? So if @user.micropost.any, then render @micropost. So let's make a partial. So the partial, it actually goes in app views micropost. So we need to make a directory here, because this is a micropost partial. And then let's add _micropost.html.erb. And since this is a table, we want each of these to be a table row. So let's do that. A tr, and then let's have a td that's class micropost. This is one micropost. And then this is how we'll get our test to pass. Let's put a span in of class content and put in micropost.content. And now we want to get that posted 1 day ago, posted 2 days ago. And we're going to do that with another span with a different class. Let's say class equals timestamp. You can choose anything you want for this. You could choose a different name for the class, but this is just what I thought of. And now we're going to say posted. And this is a really cool Rails helper. It's called time ago in words. And then it needs to take a timestamp. So in this case, this is how long ago it was created. So we'll do micropost.created@. And then we're going to say posted that long ago. So let's save this. Go back to show, render @micropost. So we need to go to the user's controller and make an @micropost variable. And let's put it before the title here. Doesn't really matter that much. @micropost equals @user.microposts. So let's see if this passes. Good, we're green. So that means something's basically working. So there's a lot going on here. A lot of Rails conventions are being invoked. So this render @microposts, it knows to render a micropost partial in the microposts directory here. And it automatically creates a micropost variable inside the partial, which is why we're able to call micropost.content and micropost.created@. Now, you may have noticed on our mockup right here that we have some pagination links here at the bottom for the micropost. So let's implement that too. We tested for pagination up here, where we paginated users here. So let's just we actually tested probably more here than we really needed. In this case, let's look for for div.pagination. Look for this selector. Let's say it should paginate microposts. Now, it doesn't really matter if all these microposts have the same content for the purposes of this test. So let's just do 30.times and then create a micropost, so factory of micropost. Doesn't really matter what this is. Let's just make it short. So we've created enough factory microposts to invoke pagination, and now we're going to get show ID @user, and let's just paste this in. Response should have selector div.pagination. So that'll fail, and then in here we need to put some pagination links. Now remember how we paginated users. In the users index, we just have will paginate. So we can do the same basic thing here on the show page inside of here. Let's just have pagination links. Just put them at the bottom instead of in both places. So let's just put will paginate, and let's go back here and save it. Oh, actually, we definitely need to paginate these guys. Okay, so at user.micropost.paginate. This is an analogy with the index here. So you can see we can paginate through the associations. This is really awesome the way that will paginate works. So page is params of page. So let's save both. We've got 3 things unsaved. Let's save them all and take a look at our tests. So we should be red. Although we suspect that we might be green, but we're actually red. And the reason is because if you look at this will paginate, remember it tries to paginate the at variable corresponding to the controller it's in. But this is the user's controller. This is the user show page. So what it's looking for is an at users variable. So we can give it an argument here at microposts. And now will paginate knows to paginate the micropost. So let's see how that works. Okay, we still got one failing test. Let's see what it is. Oh, we probably need, no? Oh, we need more than 30 of them. Okay, so it didn't paginate them because I was too stupid for my own good. So it didn't paginate them because I'm an idiot. This is really an irreducible problem. Sometimes, it's a programmer error. So I did 30 here. Previously we did 30 dot times for these factory users to invoke pagination, but I already created 2 users here. In this case, we don't have any microposts in this one little test, so we need to do more than 30 of them. Let's do 30. 31 is enough. Let's do 35. Now this should work. There we go. Okay. So 30 is the default number for one page. So what was happening there is we had exactly 30, which was just enough to fit on one page. But now that we've done 35, it works. It's invoking pagination. All right, so there's one more thing I want to do in this section, which is to add a count for the number of microposts that a user's made into the sidebar. So let's look at the show page. Here's the sidebar. We've got the name, the URL, and now let's make a link to the microposts. The count. So here microposts is a label, and we're going to say at user dot microposts dot count. In fact, let's comment this out, and let's test for a TD that has the micropost count. So let's go in here, and say So let's say, just say 10 times. Let's copy this. Create 10 factory microposts and then get show ID is at user. Response should have selector, and let's say it should be a TD. And what is the TD? It's a TD sidebar. It's a TD dot sidebar. And inside that, the content should match at user.microposts.count. So let's see if that worked. Well, it should be red now. We commented out the thing that gets it to pass. So it should be red now. And now it should be green. Let's take a look at this. Oh, still red. So what happened here is it's saying undefined method include question mark for 10 fixed num. So evidently under the hood, this content value is being sent the include question mark method by have selector. So this is an integer. So apparently content isn't smart enough to, or have selector isn't smart enough to convert its content to a string if it needs to. So this is the number 10. Let's convert it to a string with 2s. Now this should work. Great. I've included a few more tests in the screencast than are in the book, and so a lot of these have been pre-written in the book, but a few of them I'm doing more or less live, and I think it's kind of cool actually to have these because you get to see how I handle these little errors that invariably crop up. So you may have noticed here that even though we're working with a view, we haven't even looked at the browser, and that's partially because we don't have any microposts currently, so the browser wouldn't show anything. It's a lot easier to make these factory microposts in here and write the tests than it is to do the sample data. So we're going to do the sample data momentarily, but before we do, I'm just going to dump a bunch of CSS in our custom file. As usual, the full CSS is available on the Rails tutorial website. I'm just going to paste it all in, just a bunch of stuff. And remember, you have to get rid of these dots here. Say micropost. Micropost styling. And you can just look through it. There's a styling for the H1, for the micropost table, for the table row, for the gravatar, and so on. One of the things you might notice here is some rules for styling timestamp spans. You can see that it's smaller, it's colored. This is the devil's color. This is actually just gray. As usual, if you want to know what any particular rule does, just comment it out and then see how things change in the application. But that won't work until we get some sample data in there, so that's our next task. So let's take a look at the actual user show page. Let's look at my profile here. So this is showing the micropost, except it's not showing any microposts because there are no microposts. But this is working. Look at the count's working. Microposts, 0. So let's fix that. Let's open up our sample data. And this is actually kind of tricky since it's not in the app directory. You may not remember where this is. It's in libtasks, sampledata.rake. And so after creating all of these users, let's just make a bunch of microposts. So let's take a look at this. We don't want it in there. That's inside the 99 dot. So let's do, which users do we want to do this for? We could do it for all the users, but that actually gets pretty expensive computationally to make lots of microposts for all the users. Let's just do it for the first 6. I'm going to do user.all, and all takes an options hash. One of the things you can pass it is a limit. So this will limit it to 6. By the way, just for what it's worth, you can do this kind of thing. You can do this in pure Ruby. Say 1 ... say 100. Let's just bind this to an array variable. A equals this. And now you can say A of 1 up to 6. So we could do user.all, and then we could do this. 1 up to 6. This would work fine, and the truth is there are only 100 users in this case, so it doesn't really matter. But it's a bit of a dangerous practice because in an application that has, say, 100,000 users, this would be horribly inefficient because it would pull all of the users out of the database, forming a 100,000 element array, user.all, and then it would slice out the first 6. This way of doing it, user.all limit 6, actually restricts the total number to 6 in the database, so it only pulls out 6 elements. And so for each of these guys, .each do user, and now we're going to create microposts. Let's do 50 for each user. This will invoke pagination for everybody, and then some. 50 times do user dot microposts dot create. Let's just make it loud as usual. And sample data, it's a good idea to make it loud with the create bang. And then the content, you might have noticed, let's go back to this. You might have noticed that I picked lorem ipsum text here, based on that fragment of Cicero that's been used for so long for this purpose. And it's so common that not only is it supported natively by TextMate, as we saw previously, just as a reminder, lorem tab does that, but it's also supported natively by Faker. Remember, we used the Faker gem to create some reasonable looking names for our users. We can also put in some lorem ipsum text using Faker. The way it works is Faker, : lorem. By the way, you might have noticed this : notation. Don't worry about that too much. This is the kind of thing you'll learn about in a pure Ruby book. So it's Faker : lorem dot sentence. and we can give it an argument that says we want sentences of a length 5. So I'll save that. You can go online and look at the Faker Gems documentation to find out things like this. So let's save that and rake db populate. Okay, let's take a look at our application now. Let's just reload this. And there we go. Look at that. We've got all these microposts. Of course, they're all created at the same time, posted less than a minute ago. And we can also see here that micropost 50 is the count, so that's correct. Now, if we look at our sample data task, we're doing this for the first 6 users in the database. So let's take a look at some of the other ones. We can look at users, say users 3. See, that worked. Users 5. Oops. And so on. So all of these guys, the top 6, actually I think I did one that wasn't enabled with the Gravatar. So this is what it looks like for each of these users. And notice also that we have pagination links at the bottom. So that's nice. So we've made a lot of progress just in this short section. Let's make a commit to that effect. See where we are. Right, git. This was the showing microposts, so let's do that, showing microposts.